Press the wrong bloody button. Right. So welcome to the Audit Committee of Friday the 26th of September. Do we have any apologies? I think we have one.
Yes, Chair, we've got apologies from Councillor Nick Dawkes and also on the officer side from Alice Mason.
Thank you. Declarations of interest? Any declarations of interest? I don't see any. Minutes of the previous meeting. If they're a true and fair record of the meeting held on the 11th of July, we'll sign them. Are we all agreed? No alterations? Thank you. We do have one issue, though, to raise from page 6 about the follow-up we were going to do on street cleaning. Yeah.
Obviously, I'm just very curious about the audit committee taking forward to see how FCC are fully audited on their response. Because, as I said to you in an email I sent to the chairman, Councillor Hardman, I've had incidences where I've put things, registered them in May, I've chased up in July, I've ended up doing them myself in September, and there's plenty of other outstanding issues like that. And I just think that's clearly something failing here. We know the roads are not being swept very well. We know there's issues with the weeds. I know there's some plans in place, but I think at the same time as the plans in place around the weeds on the pavements, the road sweeping is difficult because I know they're struggling with the HGV licenses. But when it comes to the general jobs that we're asking to do, it still feels like there's a real problem here. So I would like to see what the audit committee can do to sort of get on top of this and for the long term.
I'll do that about another 3 times. I mean, I don't know whether Jane or Chris will take up an initial response.
Thank you, Chair. So we always follow up on our audits as a matter of course, but what we can do in this instance is accelerate the follow-up process so it's carried out sooner, and we can do that in more detail if that's what the committee desires. In terms of timing, because I'd need to go away and make sure we've got the resources available and in place. They should be, but I just need to check that. And we can certainly look to get something to you for the next committee meeting, which I think is late November. So would that be acceptable?
On top of that, Chair, so in addition to the work that Audit have done that came through the audit report, officers also, I know Tim is working with FCC to get a timeline of when we can put additional resources in terms of some of that street cleansing. So I think the two will kind of work in pincer to ensure that we've got that performance improving. So we'll make sure that we get that email out to all members as well.
The issue that I think you've been describing, I know it's a work issue and not an audit issue, but it is something that's been going on much longer than recently, because I started with finding out that there was that issue and being told that it was because of the contractual problems of Fox or whoever they call themselves on street sweeping, taking off the staff from the other stuff. And I thought that they were engaging a secondary contractor in order to solve the problem. But it doesn't seem to be working.
I believe that's to do.
Sorry.
I believe that's to do with the weeds on the pavements, that they've got the 2 additional spraying people going around. But then I've heard from one of my colleagues that yes, that's starting to happen. It's not where I am. It doesn't feel like where I am anyway, but it's starting to happen. But there's also a problem that because FCC are under-resourced, they literally say that in their emails now, every time when you send them an email, they're not going back the 2 weeks later and clearing up the dead weeds. So there's still that, as I say, you've got the weed issue on the pavements, you've got the road sweeping, but you've got the general jobs, and the sweeping up the weeds is effectively like a general job that is a follow-up job from the spraying, and that's not really happening as well.
But the core seems to go back to the contract in the first place, And was it right at the time but outdated now? Or is it the contractor who's got a problem of having promised to do more than he could?
If I can just jump in there, Chairman, I think it was the other part of the email I sent to you was about auditing of the contracts, because obviously it feels like there's a breakdown somewhere in the contract that's happened. Now, obviously, I don't know what it is. It's for people on big, much higher pays than I'm getting to have a look at this. But I do wonder if the auditing should be looking at the contracts that are put in place to ensure that they are robust, and that when there's a breakdown of services, or there should never be a breakdown of services, or where there is one, that there's a get-out clause for the council.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost we would look at contracts, but we'd look at it more from a performance management perspective, because 99 times out of 100 the council knows what it's doing when it comes to entering into contracts with these sorts of third parties. But it can be difficult to see evidence of active and effective performance management. And when we undertook the review that we'd reported on in the year-end report, we were looking more at the subcontractor, because there was the initial contract and then there was a subcontracted arrangement. And I understand that might have come to an end now, but we'll clarify obviously as we do our follow-up work. But it is important that officers at all levels, and I say it throughout this council and all local councils, because it's a very common issue, that you have your contract itself is absolutely fine and above board and has got all the other clauses in and so on, but you have to manage it, and where you've got issues with delivery, it has to be actively managed.
I think, if I can, Chair, I think the point about was it the wrong contract in the first place? And it was 2018, I think it was, wasn't it? 2018, when the contract came in. I would say, although I wasn't here, I would say it was the right contract at the time, and that was the one that went through a very formal procurement process. Since the changes during the pandemic, and we asked, could you move from this to that? We did say that. We had those conversations in terms of, if you can't, haven't got the capacity to do that, we need to ensure that you've done this. I think that was more around ensuring waste collection was done during that time. Is there a problem now in terms of resourcing for the company, and not just FCC, for lots of companies, around getting the labour in? I'm not sure, and that's why I think we need to check with Tim about what they're doing with this second contractor, because that was the same as I understood, that there was a second contractor coming in. Yes.
Chris, do you want?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say that when we did the initial audit, we made a series of recommendations about performance management measures and evidence in them, and follow up if they were found to be operating below the required level. So that's obviously something that we will follow up on in some detail when we do that follow-up review.
Just to say, I'm happy with Chris bringing forward the follow-up and see where we get to from that in November. If you're happy with that, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, there's two sort of strands to this. I mean, one, I think, frankly, belongs with overview and scrutiny, which is more the performance end of it. From the audit point of view, of course, we would be seeking reassurance that we're not paying for something we're not getting, in effect. So we'll leave that in your hands, Chris, and I think the committee is agreed that, you know, that seems a fairly sensible way to follow up, and we look forward to your report in November, did you say?
Hopefully, yes.
Hopefully in November. Yeah. Thank you very much. We move on to item 4, which is the Risk Management Policy and Framework Update.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jen.
Members will remember we've been talking about this for a good few months now, and it was on the back of looking at not just the original score, the current score, but also with the mitigations that were put in place, what would the acceptable score do? So what I've tried to do is update the previous policy and framework that came through to members a number of years ago, and just better reflect, hopefully, the modern approach in terms of that acceptable score after the current score. So managing risk, as we've talked about, it's across the whole of the council. We include it as much as we possibly can in terms of committee reports. So executive board reports always reflect the risk management arrangements, and clearly the audit plan that Chris develops is driven by the risk score in terms of what the risks are like within a particular service. That's what we do every year, don't we? In addition to people highlighting other areas as well. So the area I just wanted to talk about is on, so if we start on the actual policy itself, so we're talking about managing the risks effectively, preserving and enhancing service delivery through to safeguarding customers, clients and contractors, and also around performance as well. Risk management approach, identifying possible risks, achieving our objectives, identifying analysis through to control of monitoring. So what mitigating actions are we putting in place? And then on page 17 through to page 18, we look at the risk sort of scoring matrix, the assessment matrix, and there's a couple of things when we get to the risk register that have been picked up in the last few days, really, when SMT have looked at it again and other officers to say, yeah, to use scoring for the future isn't quite right, Jane, because you've made that worse, even though it's a lower number. Because when you look at 5 and 6, 6 is actually a lower likelihood. It's all about understanding the likelihood and the impact. So if you're moving something to a 5, it's saying your likelihood is higher and the 6 is lower. So it's just getting my head around all of that, because it was the new framework, which I think I've got 2 or 3 of them not quite where I want them to be, that if we can at the meeting we can look to change. So what I'm hoping, Chair, is it's just more of a robust framework than perhaps we've got currently. The risk management group, we haven't had very many meetings, if I'm honest with you, of the risk management group. So what I'm doing, we have a health and safety group, which are generally members from different officers from different services. So what I'm going to do is move that to an hour and a half and have a risk management group, because whilst it's not just about health and safety, it includes health and safety. So if we've got some key champions around health and safety, I thought it'd be quite good to use those same group of willing volunteers to also look at risk management and the risk strategy as well. But this has gone through the senior management team, so the directors and the chief executive, and we're all comfortable with the approach. And also I've spoken to Chris about the assessment matrix as well. So I appreciate that it's linked in with the risk register, but it's just any questions initially on that framework.
It's important. I mean, you raised it, so to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the only question I had was we did talk at some point about expanding out the numbers a little bit, so it'd be maybe like a 4x4 matrix in order to sort of like tease out that, because even now there's some where the number, you know, you've done lots already, you're doing loads more, but the numbers actually haven't changed. Yeah. And it was just, I thought, a 4x4 matrix, not going ridiculous, but it would just help to tease out that these improvements are making a difference, if you know what I mean.
I think when we looked at it, and Chris and I had that conversation, we felt that this did work, and I take your point that sometimes the scoring still says the same, even though we've done a lot, because there's such a sort of gradient and a number of increments, isn't there, within that same scoring. I think if we started moving to 4, it would add complexities across the shared services as well, that we're trying to make the shared services efficient. So, for example, if we look at cyber is being done across ourselves and Malvern and Worcester City, and I'm not saying we just need to copy them, but actually for the team's point of view, if they're looking at their risks, they need to what they want to do clearly is when they look at their corporate risk register, they've got a similarity between each one, so they look in those and say, okay, that's where we are on that one. Once we start adding more in and then the others aren't, it just perhaps takes away some of those efficiencies and timeliness in them getting information to us as well. It's not about we need to be the same as them, but we just need to be mindful that we are in that environment, and we feel as officers, I think, that this does work.
Okay. Fair enough.
I think maybe what we could do, sorry, Chair, is we could use it for a year and then see whether members think, no, this isn't really working for us. We still feel we haven't got enough detail in there and enough scope of flexibility. We could do that perhaps, because this is kind of only the second one, isn't it, that we've looked at.
Yeah, fair enough. It's just, you know, when you get, it's your job as an keep an eye on with the audit committee, and then you can see you're doing all these works, and then it hasn't made a difference.
No.
You know, if I was ever have come back, something happened, and I'd have to justify why I didn't sort of speak up and say, well, are you doing enough? Because you're still sitting on 7, so are you really doing enough to get down to 6 or 5 or something? You know what I mean? But anyway, I'll do what you say. Let's leave it for, you could leave it for a year and just see where we are.
I think if I could, the other thing, Chair, is maybe today, because we haven't got a lot on the agenda, could we actually go through those ones where the score's the same and challenge ourselves to see, is that reasonable? Should we actually now not be an 8, should we be a 6? Because we appreciate that the ultimate the ultimate issue would still be critical, but actually the likelihood now, because you've put all these things in, is now a 6. And I have got 3, LGR, civil emergency and cyber, that I think we need to perhaps change the scores, having looked at it again, and other officers looking at it in the last few days since it's been published as well. So maybe we could do that. I think that'd be helpful.
I mean, in effect, you would square the matrix, wouldn't you? Yeah.
I would be talking about a 4x4 just to try and tease those numbers out a little bit more. But I mean, as I say, 3x3, we'll see if it works.
Right. Any other comments? No, thank you very much. In that case, we agree the updated risk management policy. All in favour? Thank you. And now we go on to the mid-year review of the corporate risk signature. And ask for any updates.
Thank you, Chair. So if we can go straight to the register, if that's okay with everybody. So the first one is the LGR. So that there is clearly a risk around failure in decision making. The update is that we've commissioned the consultancy now to develop the business case. So the original risk score, if we just talk about the scores for a moment then, so the original score is 9. The current score is showing as 5, but actually I think that should be showing as 8, because what we've done by that first set of controls is we've reduced the likelihood to medium, but the ultimate risk would still be critical, because that ultimate risk doesn't change. So personally, I think that should be 8. And then with the commission consultancy, which we've talked about, KPMG have now been commissioned alongside Mutual Ventures to do the piece of work for the business case at the end of September. That is our kind of final thing in what we know at the moment what we need to do. So I think rather than that being a 4, because that again pushes us up to high likelihood, that should be a 6, which is low likelihood but still critical. So I think that should be 9 then, and what did I say? That needs to be a 9, 8 and a 6. That's what I think those should read, rather than 9, 5 and 4. And I think that would be more reasonable, because they all stay then. If you don't do those things, it's still critical, because it is critical if we don't end up agreeing the local government reorganisation, I feel. But actually you've gone from high to medium to a low likelihood. So it's about the likelihood rather than the ultimate impact. The impact would still be critical on the authority, we believe. I suppose it depends on what happens in the next 12 months with the government, whether they what they decide we're going to tell us we should go with. And this will, of course, be updated. Once we've submitted, it will be updated. And then once we know whether it's 2 or 1, it will be updated again. So I think if we in the minutes can change that, Chair, to, so it stays at 9 and then it moves to an 8 and a 6.
Yeah. I mean, I was guessing we follow
Thank you.
because I mean, I mean, if KPMG didn't deliver, then I mean that's sort of the only risk, really.
Yeah, it
to
is.
be frank. Well, I'm pretty sure they will.
I'm fairly sure they will. So I think that likelihood's low.
So that likelihood is pretty low. So I would have thought that was reasonable.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, shall we move on to the
Yeah,
next
of
one,
course.
Jane?
Just a quick update. Yesterday, so on number 2, I appreciate they're both green. The feedback was presented to the peer challenge group, so they revisited us yesterday, and their feedback was very positive that we had last night. So I'm hoping it's in Vic's roundup today, if he's managed to quickly get that information in. So that was it. They were very, very pleased with what we've done in terms of the corporate peer challenge action plan. that was good news. It was just really, I'm not going to focus on the ones that are green because I don't think we particularly need to, because of them haven't got further actions. Again, medium-term financial plan, low likelihood and low risk. I think those, Councillor Franks, you're happy that the greens, they both stay at 3s? I haven't got a problem with those.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Okay, thank you. Where were we? The next one was, so we've got the SWDP, so that at the moment that's showing 5, which is medium likelihood and the impact to be significant. And we're still saying the impact is significant. Again, I think we could potentially, it's a difficult one because there's still a discussion ongoing around have we got a 5-year plan, which I understand. So that's probably the only area that I think if we end up that being 3, it suddenly becomes a green. Are we really green at the moment on SWDPR? Probably not. We're probably more of an amber. So whether we move a 7, yeah. I think we need to stay that it's a significant, the impact is significant, so 7 and 5, even with what we're doing, it's all dependent on the inspector of what they feed back. So I think as it currently stands on the 6-month review, they would both stay at 5s with that rationale around it's out of our hands at the moment, we're waiting on the inspector.
I would agree with that, because we are not in a position to turn down planning applications that are outside neighbourhood boundaries, or indeed in the existing plan, or indeed outside the emerging plan, actually. So, I mean, I would have thought 5 was reasonable. Are we happy with that? Thank you.
I absolutely take Councillor Frank's point that why would you have all these mitigating actions and have the same score, but just I think on that one till we know, and then hopefully when we do our next 6-month review we'll say everything's fine, it's all been agreed, and that is now low. That's what I'm hoping. So number 7 was the next one that I think we need to change.
Well, it might come off the risk. Well, no, it would only come off the risk register for a month. I thought, you know,
back again with the
because
numbers.
it starts again in January.
The new
Christ.
numbers, yeah.
Who thought of this system?
The next one I'd like to propose to change is the cyber security, and that's probably a conversation on the back of today. So the original score being, where are we? Sorry, that's Cyber's number. Sorry, that was me. 3s. Number 9, yeah, sorry. So original score is 9. I think the current should be 8, which again is still ultimately critical, as we know when you look at the private businesses. I mean, look at Jaguar Land Rover and also Marks and Spencer's, they've still not really got to where they need to be. Huge amount of money, millions and millions that they've lost. So I think the current should be, the middle score should be an 8. Now, depending on how members feel today went and what you think we're putting in place, that should, I think, be a 6, because that's still, it's a low likelihood, but there is still a likelihood, but I think it's lower. But the impact would be still critical in terms of the council moving forward. There'd still be a big risk, a critical risk to us. So, yeah. I mean, when you look at, if somebody starts looking at our balances, our funding, you think, maybe. But that's what I'd like to say, is that should be a 9, an 8, and a 6. Should members agree that the likelihood is low based on the update that you've had?
Well, I mean, the likelihood was encapsulated by our opening sentence, when, not if.
So maybe leave them at 8s?
I think I'd leave them at 8.
I mean, I'm a little bit the other way around, to be honest, because yeah, I understand it is a case of always when and not if. But I feel like the team have done such an amazing job that even when it happens, yes, of course, you can always say it's absolutely highly critical, but actually I feel like they've limited that it's not necessarily the absolute critical level that it could have been. So I actually am the other way. I would lower the score a bit more, to be honest, to take into account all the absolute hard work they've done, and the fact that they've not only reduced the likelihood of it happening, but also the critical level that would happen if it did. So that's why I'm kind of happy to tease out these things, like numbers, a bit more, because I just feel like that what we see at the moment wouldn't be reflective of what we've just heard. But that's me. I'll leave it.
I've taken that point, because as you say, that it necessarily wouldn't be, it would be maybe significant rather than critical. There would still be an impact on the authority, but it wouldn't be critical. And then the impact would not be the likelihood wouldn't be high, it would be perhaps medium, and that's not because we haven't done everything we possibly can, but maybe we're still saying medium. It would then be a 5 as opposed to an 8 or a 6. We could have that as a 5, which would then be medium, so significant impact rather than critical impact, but medium likelihood rather than high likelihood or low, because as we've said, there may be a when, not an if. So we could put that as a 5 rather than an 8. So at least it shows a shift because of the work that they've done, because it does impact on the team that they see it's still red. Think, we've done all of this work and it's still red.
And will the minutes reflect that we've just had nearly an hour's worth of discussion with the cyber team, and they've taken us through what they do and what they're looking to do, and that we were all extremely pleased with the work they did, and just hats off to them, really. Thank you very much.
I'm sure we can work that into the minutes, Spencer. I mean, that's a helpful suggestion. And actually, I think you're right, because I'm assessing the risk of the event, not its duration, or indeed how speedy the recovery is, because I did take tremendous reassurance that when the attacks happened and they penetrated the system, we would be able to get up and running again in short order. And I mean, and that's the point. It would minimise the disruption because the systems would come back quickly. You never know till it happens, but I was reassured. So I'd agree with your synopsis, Joe, if that's what you call a risk register outcome, I think. Great.
Sorry, Chair, can I just have clarification then on what the final scores were, please?
Just to make it formal, I mean, I take it that the committee is having to note the voting. Thank you very much. Yes. Over to Chris for the internal progress report, which is pretty good.
Thank you, Chair, and hopefully relatively straightforward today. This is the regular internal audit progress report. It's there to support the committee fulfilling its role in overseeing our work, covered on pages 47 to 60 on the agenda pack. And it's nice to be in a position where we can report good progress is being made. We remain at full staffing, and by early September we delivered 138 days against the full year plan of 275. The latest position by the end of last week was 148 days. 3 audits have been fully complete, so that's on the corporate credit card, which was reasonable assurance, recruitment and selection, and absence management, which both received substantial assurance. We've got 3 audits at the draft reporting stage, and 5 are in progress, and there are only actually 5 audits which are yet to start. A summary of progress and the results so far are on pages 55 to 59 in the agenda pack. And overall, the audit plan's on track, and I expect to deliver the Council's annual audit opinion on time. We also got no real concerns in relation to implementation of recommendations. So 20 outstanding, that's a big reduction on 37 at year end, and none of the 20 are currently overdue. So at this stage, there are not any findings from our work which, in my view, would impact significantly and adversely on the Council's annual governance statement for this current financial year. Notwithstanding the conversation that we had at the start of the meeting, there are no changes to the plan being proposed at this stage, but we will pick up on that follow-up work that was discussed earlier. Just coming back to continuous improvement, because that was covered off in the annual report that I brought in July. We've got some team training on audit assignment management next week, which will be on site. And then we're also having some training on integrity and objectivity, which is being arranged for, is being arranged for the 26th of November. And that's there, that addresses the conversation that we had at the last meeting around conflicts of interest and so on, and how we train and evidence that. So just to provide you with some assurance that that is being addressed. But apart from that, members are just asked to note the report today, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for this? Yeah.
It's not a question, it's a statement just to say that well done to Chris and the team, really. I mean, when I first joined the audit committee, things were running a bit behind, to be honest, and then you've come on board and now you're well ahead, and no, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are actually a little bit behind at 2 of the sites, but not you. And but in reality, it's not an issue either way, because we've got the staffing available. So my view is we therefore perform. So as long as we've got our full staffing establishment in place, we make sure we perform. It's nigh on impossible to deliver 7 concurrent audit plans to exactly the same state of progress week in, week out. That's nigh on impossible. So we are a little bit behind on a couple of them, but we're ahead elsewhere. So that'll even itself out over the coming months. But as I say, there's no concerns with yourselves, and staff continue to be really supportive and cooperative here. And that's really helpful to us. We've got a really good working relationship, so I'd just like to commend that, because it's a good place for us to be.
I did have a quick question. How is your interface with assets going? The external auditors and yourself obviously have a series of liaison meetings. But is that something that happens after your final report?
We don't really meet with them, to be completely honest with you. The world of audit's changed a lot. When I joined local government, there used to be something called managed audit. That's when we had the audit commission. And the audit commission would have an office physically in the council offices, and we'd have one. And we worked very closely together, and they used to, dictate's probably a bit strong, but we had to audit every single financial system every year, and we had to get coverage of every month through the year. So that was what was meant by managed audit. And then they would actually take our audit files away, they'd review them as well, and they'd place reliance on our work. That went away, that system went some years ago, after the audit commission was abolished. So external audit tend to place a lot less reliance on the work of internal audit nowadays. Having said that, they do still carry out their own assessment of the internal audit function, and to do that they'll ask a series of questions, but we don't meet anymore as such to actually go through that. What tends to happen is you get a big email with a set of questions in, and then it's they're sort of filtered through and sent through to me, and then I have to answer them in writing, and if they've got any follow-up queries, they'll ask me, or they want some evidence, for example, then they'll ask me. But that's the way it tends to work now. Is that right or not? I don't know, but that's how it's operating.
What that has shown is I've obviously not managed to move on in 15 years, I suppose. But there we go. So thank you very much indeed for that reply. Those lunches have all gone. Oh, well. Sandwiches in the office, yeah, maybe. Any other points for Chris? Okay. Julie, we're noting, aren't we? So if we can just duly note the progress report. And the date of the next meeting is the 21st of November at 2 p.m. And thank you very much indeed for your attendance.